Are you looking for a way to make co-parenting easier? Talking Parents can help you streamline your shared parenting responsibilities and minimize conflict by keeping all interactions organized and documented. With Talking Parents, you can stop worrying about the he said, she said, and focus on what matters most, your children. Download the app in the Apple or Google Play Store and start a 30-day free trial today. Welcome back. We're talking today about insights on healing from domestic and narcissistic abuse with Sybil Cummin. Just to set the stage here, as of course you know, coercive control, narcissistic abuse, and domestic violence leave really deep scars that affect every aspect of our lives when we're victims and survivors of it. It erodes self-esteem, it creates overwhelming feelings of isolation, and it can leave us trapped in cycles of fear and confusion. And not just us, but our children, right? They're often the silent witnesses of things we wish they had never seen, of coercive control and domestic violence. And they carry invisible wounds, in fact, that could ripple into the intimate relationships they have as they become adults. So we're going to talk about this and some key ways that you can begin healing from this experience. Today, I have Sybil Cummin. She's a licensed professional counselor and approved clinical supervisor, specializing in working with survivors of narcissistic abuse and domestic violence. So she's our girl. She is the founder of Rising Beyond Power and Control, which is a membership community that provides ongoing support for those navigating post-separation abuse and challenges in the family court. And what a perfect guest for us to chat with today. Welcome, Sybil.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Journey Beyond Divorce specializes in complex, high conflict divorces. And so our listeners are on the fence trying to decide if they can mend or if they should end, or they're just stepping into the legal process or in the thick, that messy middle. And many are also post-divorce and now figuring like, how in the world do I co-parent with this person that I couldn't collaborate or communicate or cooperate with? And so the conversation today, I think, is so important. So I would love for you to dive into a first things first, which I know you talk to your people about. But before we dive into any of that, I have a question for my guests when they first.
Absolutely. Shoot.
So, Sybil, what is something that you're most proud of in your life?
Most proud of several things, but I think the thing I am most proud of is just my way of being. If I get an idea that I think can impact people kind of larger than myself, impact the community, I just try and do the thing. And just believe that everything can be figured out and worked out as long as the intention is kind of pure and good and really wanting to help. And I think the part of me that is proudest is that I am able to share that with my children who are they're still pretty young, 9 and 13, and hoping that they know that they can make an impact on the world too.
I love that. Yeah. And what a beautiful role model. And at such a young age to say, put your mind to something, set the right intention, and you can make it happen. Yeah. And you're clearly helping so many people in the domestic violence space as well. So let's dive into that. I emerged from a 14-year marriage, 3.5 years in the courts in a very high conflict situation, police, child protective services, and everything in between. It is quite the journey, and it leaves, as you say, scars. So for those tuning in who are on their journey and trying to heal, let's really dive into what are some initial steps that you encourage people to take when they're realizing, oh, this wasn't just a difficult person. This was much more than that.
Yeah, I think it's twofold because, right, you and I know the family court and all the systems that you were just sharing, the timeline of those things are not parallel with the timeline of healing from an abusive relationship. And so the tricky piece of healing from this is that you don't have the space that you need where you are abuse free to heal, right? So in criminal court, they're going to say order of protection. You should not have any contact with this person ever. Let's keep your babies safe. Let's keep you safe. And our family court system is like, actually, could you have conversations with this person every other day of the week? Even, they might have been abusive to you. I don't know, but you need to have constant communication with this person who is abusive. And so there is this tricky piece of how do you heal when you are continuing to be abused? The abuse looks different. And so that is probably the trickiest piece, is just knowing that this is going to be tough and not shaming yourself that this is going to be tough and this is going to be a long journey. Shame, it will pop out, right, in every part of this journey that you're on for a lot of reasons. And so I think the first one is just setting yourself up with kind of curiosity about how you are reacting the ways you're reacting, how you are feeling the way you're feeling, rather than automatic judgment on those types of things. So that piece. And then there is, we call it in the therapy world, like psychoeducation. So it is actually really helpful to know the things that you've experienced, to have language for the things you've experienced, to know that you're not alone in your journey, right? Like there wouldn't be a word in the dictionary called gaslighting if you were the only one. There wouldn't be the words of love bombing, coercive control. There wouldn't be that if you were the only person experiencing it. So there's that two parts of that deep dive of some learning without going down the rabbit hole, because you will probably find yourself down a rabbit hole of trying to figure out the why, and then setting yourself up more from a nervous system perspective of trying to heal your body, your mind, right? There's a lot to it because, again, it's not this linear path where you can just step one, check, step two, check, step three. Oh, good, I'm all healed. That'd
Right.
be great.
So I think that let's start with your first statement, because I think that you're going through the court system and a whole lot of things are happening. You're negotiating, fighting, reacting to your spouse. There are, of course, all of the other parties. The in-laws might have something to say. The kids might have something to say. Everybody has something
Mhm.
to say, right? And you don't want to hear a whole bunch of it, but they're going to say it anyway. And
Mhm.
so just that piece of still being in communication with actually negotiating kids and finances with this person that you've been abused by, you're saying you need some safe space to begin to heal. So in that part of the process where it's not safe, in fact, it probably feels even more dangerous than when you were
Mhm.
just stuck in should I stay or should I go, because now you're on the battlefield, you're negotiating these things, and God knows they're telling you how it's going to be and how you're going to lose and the terrible things that are going to happen to you. In that, what do you recommend people do in those I don't even want to say early stages, in the messy middle? How do they begin working on their healing? Do they begin working on the healing?
Yes, and it is difficult. I would say the step to that is, and I'm biased, I'm a therapist, right? But finding a professional. It does not have to be a licensed professional counselor. It does not have to be a psychologist. It does not have to be, right? And all of my therapy buddies are going to be like, oh no. But finding a professional that understands what coercive control looks like, why you might still be feeling scared, even though you no longer live with this person, right? Finding a healing someone that understands. And I say someone because unfortunately, there are not a huge percentage of therapists and trained therapists, psychologists, social workers, LMT that actually fully understand your experience and the family court system. So there are a lot of people that understand and can help survivors heal from domestic violence, from coercive control, from, having experiences with narcissism. And there is that piece that is missing a lot of times is that therapists are taught to be like petrified of the family court system, do not testify. Like it's like it's ingrained in us to not do those things. So we shy away from those things as a community. And so finding someone that understands both, or potentially you need two people, two different people. So you might need a therapist to do trauma work. If you're experiencing PTSD, you need a therapist to do that work. And if they don't understand the family court system, you might need to find that someone else as well. So it's finding the right people, like the who's that are going to help you on your journey, as opposed to it's all on your shoulders, because there are who's that can help you.
Right. No, I love that. And in fact, so often I talk to clients who've been seeing a therapist and working on that kind of my family of origin, connecting the dots, understanding how I ended up in this hot mess to begin with. And so as a divorce coach, being able to help them with the day-to-day arguments and conflict that comes up,
Mhm.
and understanding the legal process, understanding where they're at, why they're particularly highly triggered given what's being negotiated right now or what have you. And so I do believe that the support of a good divorce coach and a therapist who understands abuse, domestic violence, that is such a beautiful support for people.
Mhm.
And let's just talk about that for a minute, because I think that most people enter divorce thinking, I need a matrimonial attorney, right? I need a hard stop. Or maybe I need a divorce attorney and a therapist. And yet, divorce is, especially leaving a high conflict marriage, is so just overwhelmingly emotionally triggering for people who just go for the piece of paper, the settlement agreement. There's a big disconnect between them not feeling so good afterwards. Do you find that as well?
Yeah. Yeah. And that there's so many intricacies. And so if my guess is the people listening to your podcast are not going to be completely blindsided by what our family court system look like right now. And so many are. They come into it with this belief that here are the people, these are the experts that are here to help me navigate this and to find the best interest for the child. And then they are just blindsided when that is actually not what it looks like. And so for those people, it really is, right? They can be really taken advantage of within the family court system. And so it's like, are they completely derailed in mediation and just agree because it is so petrifying to think about fighting? Or they start to learn and they're like, oh, most of these divorces post decree, it's going to be like 6 years. Oh, nope, not signing up for that. I just want this over. And so, right. And so it's so nuanced and tricky for our clients, either my therapy clients or the clients in the community.
That I think that I think we can fairly call it a double victimization.
Oh,
I have
yes.
clients who, one of the things I say is please make sure that when you hire an attorney, that they don't go, yeah, 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 you're divorcing a narcissist, you and everyone else, blah, blah, blah. I got you. It's fine. If they're not leaning in and listening and asking really good questions and even reflecting back their understanding of the complexities, then you're going from being married to somebody who's diminishing you to
Mhm.
hiring and spending a shit ton of money
A
on.
lot of money.
And so that's what we want to avoid. And I think
Yes.
that is the double victimization. And then you can call it a triple one, because now you've got an attorney you're chasing down who doesn't hear or see you. You've got your spouse who's dogging you. And then we've got a family court system that's anything but emotionally intelligent.
Yeah. Yeah. And so a lot of the trauma work I actually do in my office is less around the specific incidents of like physical abuse or sexual abuse of my clients. It is the betrayal of the family court system and being re-victimized there, like believing that they will access the help that they need. Like they're finally taking that horrifically scary step in asking for help and leaving, and then they feel betrayed when what their ex-partner has threatened for years comes to fruition because our court system doesn't understand, or depending on the day you catch me, sometimes it's because I don't think they understand, and other times I think it's 100% bias and more purposeful. But yeah, it is really hard. So yeah, that betrayal and that re-victimization through our larger systems is a harder piece to heal from.
Your kids may not be the only ones taking tests this year. Soberlink is the #1 alcohol monitoring device on the market for parents who need to prove their sobriety. Here's how it works. Your co-parent will test at scheduled times each day. Built-in facial recognition confirms their identity. Tamper sensors flag any attempts to cheat. And results get sent instantly to your phone. So you know your kids are with a sober parent, whether it's during school nights or weekends away. Set your family up for success this school year. Visit soberlink.com/JBD to learn more and get $50 off your device. Are you looking for a way to make co-parenting easier? Talking Parents can help you streamline your shared parenting responsibilities and minimize conflict by keeping all interactions organized and documented. With Talking Parents, you can stop worrying about the he said, she said, and focus on what matters most, your children. Download the app in the Apple or Google Play Store and start a 30-day free trial today. Divorce feels like an overwhelming perfect storm as you navigate pain, fear, and confusion while struggling with unfamiliar legal procedures and the pressure to make complex decisions that will impact the rest of your life. Our free Rapid Relief Call provides the clarity and confidence you're yearning for. Visit rapidreliefcall.com for support and guidance today. Yes, so let's go back to the healing. So you're saying in the beginning, it's like having language, being able to articulate that this thing that happened to me is called gaslighting, love bombing, whatever the case may be. And the other thing I heard you say is like learning how to emotionally regulate, or even forget about
Yes.
regulating, just learning what your triggers are and how you react, because my experience has been as unconscious as the high conflict person is. The spouse of is typically equally as unconscious with their own codependent, people pleasing behaviors. They don't know why they're spinning and frenetic all the time until they slow down enough to start looking at their own childhood and their behavior. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think something that is now so much more well understood is our nervous system is set up to protect us. So those behaviors, those like people-pleasing behaviors, the more silencing type behaviors, those sometimes you don't have a choice in behaving that way. Your nervous system, its whole job is to protect you. And so it's going to do its thing. And so while you were with your partner, it was really helpful, right? It kept you safer that evening, kept you safer that evening. And now it is potentially maladaptive because you might be physically safe. You may not be, and there is a reality to that as well. But even if you're physically safe, your nervous system does not know the difference between a lion chasing at you and getting the notification in Talking Parents that your ex has now messaged you, right? So your nervous system sees that ding, that notification, as an indicator that you are not safe. just as if a lion was chasing you. And so you are going to go into fight, flight, freeze, sometimes fawn, which is fawning is a little bit more conscious, but those other ones are unconscious choices. Your brain is gonna do the thing. And so by finding those skills to regulate your nervous system, which that doesn't just mean like you're sitting crisscross applesauce, middle finger and thumb together and humming. Granted, that does work. The humming actually helps with your polyvagal nervous system, your polyvagal nerve to calm it down. But finding those ways to regulate your nervous system to slow your heart rate down, to be able to see, hey, this is not life or death in this moment. This was a ding. It's an annoying ding. It could be safe. It could not be safe. But in this very moment, I am okay. And we can't do that right away, right? That takes a lot of practice. That does take, again, toning your polyvagal nerve, which is like learning to regulate your nervous system over time, just getting good at it. So that ding doesn't automatically cause you that heightened panic attack feel. So finding ways, literally, you can Google search like nervous system regulation skills, polyvagal regulation, calm my polyvagal system. You can Google search all those, and there's a lot of things you can do on a daily basis to improve your ability to regulate quicker.
And so, just to define for our listeners, going from triggered to regulating, how long does that take and what does it look like?
Yeah, so it's different for every person, but the research shows that like specifically to anxiety, like you have not maybe not the level of an anxiety attack where you are not functional,
Right.
but really high anxiety, it takes between 20 and 30 minutes for it to dissipate. That is true if you allow yourself to sit in it. So if you immediately avoid, so it's like, ding, turn that off, hop on Amazon and shopping, the anxiety will still, it'll keep showing up. If you sit with it, really notice, ooh, I'm really anxious with that. You pause, you do, there's different deep breathing exercises. You might need to move your body. People think that is weird to shake it off actually is helps your nervous system to
A
shake
good
it off.
thing.
But finding some skill to use in that while you are allowing yourself to notice the anxiety. And so, yeah, within 20 to 30 minutes, if you allow yourself to do that, your anxiety will dissipate.
So, is it fair to say that an event happens, I get triggered, and there is a release of energy, frenetic energy in my body? I believe it's comes from cortisol, but
Mhm.
please do share. And so then all of a sudden I go from everything's fine, it's a sunny day to like whatever that looks like, whether I'm angry or anxious or scared or whatever I am. But there's a lot of energy in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I really want people to understand that when you're regulating, what I'm hearing you say is first you pause and you notice that, okay, this change in my being has occurred that's making me feel
Hmm.
uncomfortable in whatever way. And then if you're capable, conscious enough, if I just sit and I do 3 rounds of box breathing. If I like, give us a couple of examples of things that one can do in the moment that doesn't take a lot of time or energy or tools that can, and then what does that actually do for me? So for box breath, 3 rounds of box breathing does what for me and why?
Yeah. So, yes, you are right. Cortisol is going to flood into your system as well as adrenaline. Because if you think of typically before you go into a freeze state, fight or flight happens. And so that is movement. So if you're feeling that like movement inside your body, your heart rate is going a million miles a minute, the different forms of breathing that are like box breathing, or I don't know actually what it's called, but when you breathe, you inhale shorter than you hold and exhale. There's a word for that. And I don't,
Who's just
it's not
reading
coming
about
to
this?
my brain. But the reason we're doing that is those types of breathing activities slow your heart rate down. So when you inhale, your heart rate accelerates. You're getting all the oxygen in your blood, right? And if you hold and breathe out longer than you breathe in, then that is when your heart rate will decrease. It decreases on the hold, it decreases on the exhale, it decreases on the hold. And so then you inhale, it increases. And then over time, that inhale is going to increase it less. So the purpose of box breathing is to lower your heart rate. And it's a pause because you're telling your body, you're telling your nervous system, your amygdala, hey, it's not a lion. We don't have to run.
Beautiful.
And so that will help. And you may be like, nope, BS, that doesn't help very much at all because the amount of adrenaline and cortisol that flooded your system is really high. And so if you are, I call it hate cleaning, but if you're, I wish I was a hate or stress cleaner. I'm not. My house would be way cleaner if I was. But so many of my clients, they clean, right? Something stressful happens, they clean their house, they scrub and they're mopping and they're because
Exactly. My daughter has anxiety, and I said, "You used to be
yes.
a slob. What happened?" And she's like,
Oh,
"I get anxious. I clean."
yes,
That's
because that's
interesting. It's the
movement.
moving of the body.
Moving your body. If you need to just go for a quick walk, if you feel silly, like actually shaking your body, even if no one's present, a lot of people still feel weird doing that. Jumping around a little bit, hopping around, taking a walk around the block. I typically say, depending on the level of your anxiety, depends on the level of activity. So if you're mildly anxious, a quick walk or shaking it out might be enough. If it is the day before court and your stomach is upset, you can't even sit down, your whole everything is just screaming, that's when you need like the kickboxing class, the going for a run. So kind of matching your level of anxiety with the level of activity
Right. So
to,
output that energy. Yeah.
yeah, to get some of that out of your system.
So I remember this just came to mind as you were talking when I was certainly a sloppier version of myself. And I would get so frustrated and I would just scream, like usually when the kids weren't in the house, but like the neighbors probably wanted to call the cops. And I would just
Hmm.
find that something about just like just screaming at the top of my lungs would help. And
Yes.
I didn't know why.
Yes.
But is it that same thing? Is it that just
It is releasing that energy. And then there's your polyvagal nerve is goes from your brain, but it also kind of goes through your ear and down your jaw. It goes around your gut too, which is why when you're anxious, your stomach's a hot mess. And so when you are doing things like the yoga like
I was just going to ask about that. That Om for me is
that humming actually massages your polyvagal nerve. And so that is why in like the yogas and the meditations, there's sounds. And so the yelling as well, it will reverberate that polyvagal nerve and help release that energy.
and let me just ask you this. I was talking to someone about grief the other day, and I was sharing that I had gone to a sound bath, which I had never heard of before.
Hmm.
And my mom had just passed, and I laid on the beach in this hour or 90-minute sound bath, and my body moved in ways that I just never knew. Like I was like a snake on the ground. And when I got up, I remember just feeling this like insane level of peace. Like I was so still. Is that the
Hmm.
same thing, that just like expending of a lot of energy and leaving yourself like still waters, so to speak?
Yeah, I think so. I have a couple of friends who are really into sound baths. And it's funny because I actually don't like some of the sounds that are made. There's something about it, right? And everyone has different sensory input, like levels that feel comfortable to them. But yeah, so some of those, like music is really helpful. Dance is
Mm.
really helpful. You don't have to be like an amazing dancer, but all of these moving activities and sound related activities will help regulate you. And again, not everyone, right? Some people, music is their go-to and they feel better and they have playlists. Some people, it is they're going to go for a run. and moving their body that way feels good. Some people love meditation and yoga, right? And so it's finding what helps you get to, and when we talk about regulated, it doesn't mean calm. I always think of it, especially when I'm sharing it with my child and teen clients, it's you're able to have whatever feeling you're having and you know you're going to be okay.
Oh, I like that definition. So the feeling is still there, and your mind could
It
even
might be, yeah.
what it's
But
doing.
you know you're going to be okay whether you're having that feeling or not. It will go away at some point. It's not going to last forever, but that's an easier way because there is this, right, like belief that regulated is that monk who is sitting there silently meditating.
Not so much. So, okay, so emotionally regulating is on the front end. Let's dive a little deeper into the healing. So, if you were to lay out a path for healing for those who are emerging from abuse like we're talking about, are there a number of steps? How would you describe your process?
Yeah, what's tricky is that it's not linear. And especially if you're going to experience post-separation abuse, it's anything far from linear. So it is kind of that couple steps forward, couple steps back. Sometimes you're going to have really quicker feeling healing, and then sometimes you're going to feel really stuck. And so there's not really a linear path. There's a lot of different modalities that people can use for kind of that trauma healing from this. And so that too is very specific to you and what feels good to you. Personally, I use a narrative approach. It is can be used with other modalities as well. So you might have heard of EMDR, which is a great modality. Your person needs to make sure, especially if you're in and out of court, that they are assessing for that and assessing for your level of safety and perceived safety if you're going to do the reprocessing. So that's like the tapping, hands back and forth, or the eyes back and forth on the light bar. So if you're doing the reprocessing part, your therapist needs to do a good job of assessing for that. There's like that modality. There's trauma focused CBT, which I am trained in. And like it, and it's missing more of that nervous system regulation piece. So, and that is a narrative approach. So narrative approach is sharing your story. And sharing your story in a way that is not allowing you to avoid the tough, yucky spots, right, that you don't want to think about. But also, the way I do it is we're looking for meaning making. Like, how have you, like, why do you believe the things you believe about yourself? And we find that in your stories. And so we pair that again with that nervous system regulation piece because that is how you're going to retrain your nervous system that sometimes it's safe to be safe. Like sometimes it's safe to feel safe because right now you probably don't feel safe ever, right? So much of your energy is going to hypervigilance, just waiting for the next shoe to drop. Right. And so most trauma modalities have a narrative approach. There are also some somatic modalities that are really specific to just like your body. And not necessarily would you have to do a narrative, a story with those approaches. It really depends on what is going to feel right for you, what feels safe for you. And honestly, we're trained in all these modalities and therapists are like, oh, I'm this and I'm IFS trained, I'm EMDR trained, all these trainings. And 80% of your success with a therapist is based on the relationship between you and the therapist, not the modality. So if you find a therapist that you really connect with, you feel really safe there, that is going to do as much for you as like seeking out that specialized therapist in EMDR. If you didn't have a great relationship with that specialized therapist, it is not going to be successful.
So relationship trumps modality.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. And so what are some of the tells that I'm well on my way to being healed?
I think one of the first tells, which people are not happy about, but is that you're really angry. When my clients start to show anger in my room, I love it. I am so happy that they are angry. They are not feeling happy. They are very uncomfortable. But that is one of those first things that I see as like, okay, they're healing because you can't be angry about what you've experienced if you don't have enough worth to know you deserve to be treated better. And
Yeah,
so,
so to me, I'm hearing almost like it's an uptick in energy. If you're going from a victim energy of hopeless, helpless, discouraged, doormat to being angry, you've found a kick.
yes, yes. And that energy is amazing. And it can be really scary because anger in your relationship was not welcome, right? You could be harmed in that relationship if you showed angry. If you were raised a specific way where you were supposed to be the sweet, generous, always kind daughter, and I'm speaking from a female perspective, then anger may not be comfortable for you to show and to have because it was never welcome.
Right.
And I welcome that in the room. So that is one piece. I think going through right the stages of grief, and there again, it is not a linear path, right? But when you start to notice some of those shifts and the things that you're questioning are shifting, to be really curious about those things. You might notice, especially when you're angry, that you are kind of noticing all of the injustice in the world. So you might see a story on the news and you are just so enraged, and you never would have been.
Mhm.
And it's just this generalizing of kind of seeing the injustice, seeing how you've been treated, how people are mistreated. And so sometimes that can be really helpful later on if you want to do advocacy work or if you want to help others in this space. A lot of survivors do want to do some of that work, but it's not expected, not required. It's not, there's no should, there's no should that you should do advocacy work, but that can be helpful. And if you need that little push. And then further down the line is being willing to look at the shame and where it's showing up, and maybe the stories you're telling yourself around that, and starting to forgive yourself for whatever you feel like you need to forgive yourself for.
Beautiful. What haven't I asked you yet that we want to touch on before we share your gift?
Oh my goodness. There's so many things that we touch on. I think one of the things that I do always like to share is that so many of specifically the women I work with men in my practice as well, but more dominated with working with women, is that sometimes the reason you left is your kids. Sometimes that's the only reason. And your only reason for healing is your kids. And everything you do is for your kids. And at first, cool, great. If that's going to move you along and you want to see healing for your children so that you can maybe stop the generational cycles that are coming so that your children are okay. And I always like to kind of leave parents with this is children need one unconditional caregiver to have resilience and have secure attachments. One. So we don't
Amen.
need this other person to change who they are and how they are for your kids to be okay. They need you to heal and to offer them that unconditional love, and that will build resilience for them.
So I was waiting to hear something else on that. So if everything I'm doing for my children,
And hopefully at some point, there
there we
is
go.
a shift that it's enough, that you are worth it enough. And I see like people shaming themselves for having shame about doing things that are shameful, right? So if you are hearing people be like, no, you need to heal for yourself, self-care is for you, and you're not there yet, okay.
Yeah.
Start the process now. And guess what? Eventually you'll be there to where
Yeah.
you know you are good enough as you are, and you deserve love as you are, and you deserve to be treated as you are. And then it can switch and you can start doing the thing for you.
Yeah. I find that I can help parents get there faster than non-parents because what we preach to our children, we don't do for ourselves when we're in that victim position. And so, just the what if it were your daughter? What if it were your son? It's like, oh my God. And then they have this more healthy perspective. And so, if you're doing everything for your kids, and your kid was doing everything for someone else, what would you say to them? And it would bring
Mm-hmm.
you back to that voicing of self-worth and self-love. And so I love that. Thank you for that. Do you have, I know you have a gift for our listeners. Do you have one or two either takeaway tips or strategies that you want to share before we offer the gift?
I think, again, we keep learning about how our brains are working and how we need to use them to heal and what we need to heal. And something that's not talked about a lot, some of it is culture based, like we're an individualistic culture, but you will heal faster if you are in community with others who are safe. So that might not be your family, that might not be your friends, that you have to be able to assess that for yourself. And with your therapist, hopefully, can help you do those things too. And so finding people in your world that feel safe to you, so that we need to retrain our nervous system that not everyone is dangerous, because your nervous system is not, y'all don't trust anybody, right? Like with good reason, it's hard to retrust. And so finding times where it's safe to be safe and you can trust certain people and healing within community, you will heal faster if you are with other people who understand. They don't have to fully understand your exact experience. They have to be willing to understand, but it sometimes it is really helpful when survivors come together and they can start talking and somebody finishes their sentences and they're like, oh my gosh, yes. That
Yep.
can feel so validating to have that space. So if you can create that space, do it. There are people like myself and Karen and other people who help create those spaces
Yep.
if you don't have those spaces. So that, I think, finding your community is the other step of, if you really want to heal, we know we heal in relationship better.
Yeah. Yeah, and both the melting away of the isolation, the I know sometimes in my groups, it's the people who are listening to the one I'm coaching where their defenses aren't up, where they're really open, and it's like they can see in that person
Hmm.
behavior that they have, but they couldn't necessarily see it in themselves. And so I think there's something incredible about being in a group. When it's just me and my monkey mind, it's a dangerous place to be. It's always
Yeah.
better voice it out loud and get some sounding board and feedback. So definitely look for something. If you can't find anything, Divorce Care is the one organization that is nationwide. It has a Christian bent, although depending on who's facilitating it, it could be deeply religious or hardly at all. So if you're looking for something, especially if you're not near a big city, Divorce Care is a great in-person one. And then there's so many of us online where you can
Hmm.
find virtual groups. I love that suggestion. And you have a gift for our listeners.
I do. I do. So I run a community. It's called the Rising, people call it the Rising Beyond Community. That's actually not the business name, but that's what we call it, the Rising Beyond Community. And I learn as much from the community members as I did from all of my schooling and all of my books that I read and things to get the fancy letters after my name. And one of the things that is a very constant experience for survivors who are in the family court system or not in the family court system is that they hear horrible things that are not meant to be hurtful all the time. The questions from family and friends of, why didn't you leave earlier? Or, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. He always seems so nice. And aren't you thinking about the kids? And all of these questions that they honestly don't know are just horrifically hurtful. So we were going through some of these in the community because one of our members had some really good ones come up, some juicy ones come up. And so they were saying them to me and I was responding in ways because they were feeling like, gosh, don't you want that mic drop moment where you just say the right thing so that people get it and they just shut up, basically, leave you alone about it. So we came up with a bunch of mic drop responses. So it's not specific to your partner or your ex-partner. It is for all those other people that are going to say these hard things. And so they are canned responses that you can change as for them to be your own. But so you don't have to be super witty and clever when you are triggered in that moment. You've already kind of read through these and have an idea of what to say and how to say it.
Beautiful. So in the show notes, you can click the link and sign up for that Mic Drop Moments free giveaway. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to share it. It was one of the most fun things to create because we created it within the community. So much fun and kind of tough to think about some of the things people say, not knowing how harmful they can be.
Yeah, I mean, people can be well-intentioned and still oblivious, and especially when they just don't understand. And
Yes.
so what a great thing, because I think that so often somebody who's coming out of that situation is likely to either get defensive or angry and reactive. And so this is just like having a little script, a little tool to grab is beautiful.
Yeah, a script that isn't going to harm that relationship. So you get your point across without being hurtful in return.
Beautiful. Awesome. So grab that and check out the name of your website is
It's risingbeyond.com. There's a lot of resources on there as well. My podcast is on there, which is the Rising Beyond podcast. And it's kind of a place to find community if, again, you are struggling with finding community and people who get it.
beautiful. So check out the podcast as podcasters, grab the free gift, and by all means, check out Sybil's community to see if that's something that would be of interest to you. And Sybil, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom and insights with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We'll be back again real soon. Thanks for joining us on the Journey Beyond Divorce podcast. I hope you found guidance and encouragement to help you along your journey. If you like my podcast, please take a minute to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. You can also visit us at jbddivorcesupport.com, where our team of coaches support both men and women through our one-on-one coaching, group programs, online courses, and free resources. Stay tuned for our next episode, and I'll talk to you soon.